shouldn't they automatically be getting therapy? Seems like
Well, we really push that always.
I mean, why wouldn't, if being in the system is a trauma, you should be in therapy for it.
Yes, and I will tell you, the amount of flack we get for that is crazy.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
So, but that is, I mean, like, we will never have a court report that does not say begin therapy, continue therapy, stay in therapy, because it is just, everybody really should be in therapy because we've all experienced trauma, whether we have went through some of these huge things or not. I mean, I think right now, everybody's in therapy.
Everybody's in trauma.
You need to be in therapy.
Yep. Absolutely.
So we really try to make them realize that this is not a stigma. This is not because we think there's, you know, that you're schizophrenic, you know, like from one extreme to the other. It is, we want you to understand that you have experienced trauma and you need to process that trauma so it does not come back later on to destroy your relationships or the relationships of your family.
And the people don't want therapy. I thought you meant everybody else didn't want them to have the therapy, but you mean the people themselves don't want the therapy.
Yes.
Yes.
No. It is always, mom and dad are never gonna, you know, very rarely are you ever gonna see that they're voluntarily going to therapy. In fact, most of the time when there's a really significant mental issue, they do not believe they have anything wrong with them. So they really put up huge fights. We also have, you know, foster parents, grandmas who think there's no reason why the kids need to be in therapy. They're not acting out. They're not demonstrating any of these crazy behaviors. And so we're constantly saying, listen, they have experienced trauma. They're living in a foster home. They're living at your house rather than mom and dad's house. Like, that alone should seal the deal. And so we're just huge proponents of the fact that everyone should be seeking that out. And Child Watch offers it free for all of our kids.
I was going to say, where do they get this therapy? Are there places here, and who does pay for it?
Yeah, okay. So if you go to McCracken County schools, Four Rivers has a contract with them, and they will do in-school therapy. So they don't even have to get taken to Four Rivers.
That's amazing.
They literally are in the building with them. If you go to Marshall County, and I think Graves County, they have Mountain Comprehensive that do in-school therapy. So the children.
What about Paducah City?
I know they have a contract, and I'm not for sure if they're with Four Rivers or Mountain Com.
Okay, but really, they can get it in school.
Like, they kind of all divided. Okay. So I'm not for sure who has what contract, but and I would tend to think that it's Four Rivers, but I don't want to speak wrongly. But yeah, so they can be referred by the guidance counselor. They can be referred by a parent. The only thing is the parent has to come in and do an actual intake, or foster parent or, you know, social worker has to sign off on therapy. So there's a little bit of hoops to jump through, of course, just like anything. But it's super easy that way. But of course that builds insurance and stuff where Child Watch is free. Lotus has therapy as well. We try to do trauma-informed therapy, so we really push for, we don't want it to just be general therapy. We want our children to actually be receiving trauma-informed therapy because they have all experienced trauma. We can offer family counseling where, you know, we have counseling sessions with mom and the kids. So, I mean, we really just try to see where the need is and where we can meet them. So those are some of the things that are out there that we really, you know, really push, because we want our kids to get as much help as possible. But it's great when it's at the school. I mean, I just think nobody can really say no to that. I mean, we're not making you take them to appointments. The worst part about that is summer. And that is just because the kids aren't there. So they have to, you know, find them another way. So they're having to do telehealth, or you know, which is great right now because all of them. I was
going to say, it's going to be so much better than it ever was before.
I think so too. And I will tell you, from my foster parents that have kids using telehealth, they have came back and said the most amazing things about it. They said, my kid, because I don't know if you guys have ever been to Four Rivers, But like, if you go in Four Rivers, it's kind of sterile. It's kind of,
It's windy. It's like hard to navigate. It's weird, I think.
but it is just not kid friendly, right? You're not gonna, no one's gonna describe that as kid friendly. But you know what? All of a sudden, those same kids that were having to go to Four Rivers and be in this like box are now in their bedroom talking to their therapist in their safe space, and they're loving it.
Good.
There's no setting outside the therapist office for 20 minutes before your appointment. You get a phone call that says their therapist will be joining you now. Click.
Yay. That's amazing.
So I just think we're making it so much easier. Child Watch has been doing telehealth as well. But we're making it now where no one can say no. I mean, like, it could not be easier than picking up your phone and them being there, right? Or on your tablet or on your computer. So
I was going to ask you, is there a stigma to the kids that don't want their friends to know where they're going in school? You know, because where do they just disappear to?
Well, I will tell you that when I was in the middle school, which I would think that if you're going to have those kind of issues, they're going to be middle schoolers that are going to think that. They absolutely loved it. They got to go to a special room where the therapist was. They would literally pick it during breaks. So they would schedule, make really huge efforts to schedule it in the most inconspicuous time. But I will tell you that the kids were so excited because you know what? That's the only time all day they were getting one-on-one attention from anyone. So they looked forward to it like I've never
And there's
seen
so much like variability in everybody's schedule. It's not like elementary school where everybody's walking march steps to everything. So like some people go to band and some people go to typing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so, and like I said, they go to great lengths to make sure that it's during a time where it's not a giant red flag that they're getting up and leaving. And they're not calling for, your therapist is ready for you, kind of thing. But, I mean, there's always going to be some of that, but I think even more now, that they're making it where you can do it over the phone. I mean, there's so many ways. And, I mean, people that have went to a therapist that's in Murray, and that would take an hour drive. Well, now it's here. You're able to do it.
Awesome.
I think it's just going to open it up so much more to people that, especially when they try to give you every excuse in the book why they couldn't. Those excuses are clearly being taken away. So I'm very happy to hear all of those things.
Good. That's good to know. Okay.
Education advocacy. I know I've kind of hit on this before with you guys.
Guidance counselors. I remember I wrote it down several times.
Guidance counselors. IEPs. Make sure that if your kid has an IEP that you're aware of that. And you are entitled to go to those meetings. I have one right now that our kid has two of our kids have IEPs. And they were asking me yesterday, can I go to those meetings? I said, well, yes and no, because I don't know what COVID's rules are.
Right.
But
you can.
Right? We can do it over the phone. We can Zoom it. But yes, you have every right to be a part of those meetings. So, and one of our CASAs yesterday said, my kid has an IEP. I'd never even heard of an IEP before this training. And I am so glad that when I went through my CASA training that you guys talked about it, because now that I know my kid has one, it's totally changing what I'm advocating for as a CASA. So I hope that works out for you guys as well, based on your kids as well. Any other questions about school? Like I said, I know we talked about that one before, so I don't really want to hound on it if you guys have no questions. Okay, great. Okay, let's jump into, was there anything else in the foundational course before we got to the Amarillo case that you guys had any questions about? He's got to look through a notebook.
So many notes I have to go back and read what I.
Oh, one thing we didn't talk about is the kids that are aging out of the system. Did you guys have any big surprises in that? And how your role would drastically change if you had an older youth versus a younger youth?
No,
to me, like, that's like, there's almost I don't want to use the word appealing, But like, if our goal is to really focus on them, then that's a situation where like you're released from dependency on other adults, right? Like you're trying to get them on their feet, you know, instead of like hoping what happens with the parents or hoping the right adoptive parent comes along or like, you know what I mean? Like there's a part of me that's like, that's kind of appealing about like, okay, well, you and I are in this and we're going to get you to where you need to be. And it seems like, you know, I like that in a way, weird way, even though I know the challenges to a child aging out of foster are like massive, but it's like, you can't go back in time. You know what I mean? I did like how they were like, it's never too late for permanent placement. I thought that was like, I like how they like really, really emphasize that too. Cause I do think that there is, you know,
We do We do a program here called Fostering Futures that I teach, and it is about aging out and helping our older youth through the system. Because originally, the state believed that at 16 years old is when we can have a conversation about you aging out. And when they created Fostering Futures, they said, nope, we're going to take that back to 14 because we feel like as much time as we possibly can be instilling life skills in these kids, whether they get adopted or not, is going to be beneficial. But whenever the state would bring them this book, it's a book about this thick for them to work through, and they get like $275, I think, for filling it out. It is a ton of work and really thick. And they have to work it all on their own. There isn't somebody that's sitting there really helping them through those things, like how to make a budget, how to apply for insurance. I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff that they expect them to know. But if you don't have any basis for that, that's huge. So we actually
need that. It almost needs to be part of high school.
I agree. I think as a freshman, you should be working on it. Really, I don't think 8th grade would be too young, but.
Well, it's really smart because it's like, you know, the whole model of like where we're trying to plan for two realities, like,
right.
Either the parents get them back or they, you know, when they're younger, like it seems like, yeah, at a certain point we need to be clear-headed and about like the two realities we're talking about. Are you either aging out? Is one of them is aging out. So let's start preparing for that. That makes total sense to me.
Absolutely. Well, and to be honest, I don't think that any of those skills would be bad for anybody that's adopted either, right? No. I mean, it wouldn't be bad for my kid, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the other thing is that this shouldn't be where we're singling out these kids. This should be every kid gets treated this way. And we expect them all to know these things.
They should be aging out of our houses. Aging out.
I saw today that for the first time since the Great Depression, more than 50% of people from 20 to 30 live with their parents.
Yes. I can't remember. I heard it like last week or something. There must have been a new study conducted.
It's officially more than 50%.
Like, yep. It is so common now that that these kids are back home. And my husband is like always drilling my 10-year-old saying, you're not going to be like this.
I'd be happy. They can come back. It's fine.
He said, I want you to go to college, and if you get a degree, you're more than welcome to come back. But you have to show me that, gonna be doing those kind of things. But I just thought it was funny. But another huge thing about these kids are, if you're in the system, your opportunity to make choices is very, very small. Where at least, kids in our home, we can train them to make decisions and to get to go. If I wanted to go open a banking account for my kid, we go to the bank, open a banking account. I don't have to call the social worker, ask her to meet us at the bank, and there's just so many hoops that our kids have to jump through. Just to get their social security card is another huge thing. So if they want to apply for a job, it can't just be, let's go fill out an application and get a job. There's a lot of steps that are involved in that process. So that is kind of what Fostering Future does. Last year, I did a class for like 3 hours or something for CEUs for you guys, where we discussed some of the options about how to help our kids best with these kind of situations. They may have never made an appointment before. And then one of the first questions on our questionnaire is, where do you go on the holidays? And that really, I don't know, for some reason that just really stuck in my head. Like, wow, when I think about where am I going on the holidays, I have so many places that it's a stress trying to remember how to get to everybody's house. I can't imagine what it's like for those kids that have nowhere to go for Thanksgiving, that have nowhere to go for Christmas because they don't feel like they have a family. And so that also helps us identify who that other adult in their life might be. If they say, well, I've always went to Sandy's mom's house. Well, make sure that we're fostering that relationship with Sandy's mom because she views them as someone important in their life. So
now when they age out of the system, can they come to our house for Thanksgiving? Is that allowed?
yes, because you're no longer a CASA at 18.
Right, good.
We would never tell you that, that we want you to cut it off the minute that they turn 18 and never speak to them again. But you're going to see all of our CASAs are different. Some of them have made lifelong connections with these kids and they know everything they've done and they get phone calls from college and they get to see their babies. And then some of them really do. When they close a case, they say, okay, I just can't continue worrying about that anymore. I have to cut that off and I'm going to jump into my next case. And everybody is different and there's not a right or a wrong. There are very different reasons why you may or may not continue that relationship. But we will always encourage that if you want to hang around with them long after that case is closed, we would never, discourage that.
Good to know.
Okay, I know we are really winding down. Okay, so Amarillo. So what was the key issue with the Amarillo case this week?
I mean, I feel like, I hope I don't have this answer wrong. I feel like it's her immigration status.
Okay.
That's what I felt like, because it's just everything turns on that. She can't go to school if she has no documentation.
Right.
She couldn't be with the family, like the kinship relationship that might work really well because they're undocumented.
Okay.
And she doesn't want to be adopted by the foster family, but it's like she doesn't really want to go back to her country of origin. So we're going to have to make a call to get her on a path to citizenship if she's going to pursue any other resources. I felt like, is that wrong?
Okay. Well, everybody has their opinion. I think that is a valuable opinion. I will tell you that I did this in a training with other CASAs when we were learning how to be facilitators, and they gave me an entirely different answer than any other class I've ever had. Okay, so what I love is that every class has a different take on it. Every person has their own life story that they bring and, from the behind the scenes. So they all kind of view it a little different. I think that the most important thing, the overarching thing about the Amarillo case is culture. I think that's also going to pull in your immigration status. But the thought about culture playing into this story is the number one issue. Okay, so tell me, what are some of the cultural things that we become aware of in the story?
The church. And
okay.
That was a big one. I mean, and that's their culture that they, and that's sort of Catholic too, but I think that's their culture.
Okay.
And
yeah. Go ahead, Vicki. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And wanting the older girl now, I've lost her.
Maria?
To go back.
Maria?
They wanted her to come back to work, basically, to help with the other kids. And that's sort of culture too, isn't it?
Okay.
Oh, that's a really good point. Mm-hmm.
I forgot where she was. I can't remember all the details. And a lot of people living in one house.
Okay. A lot of people living in one house.
I had a question when I was writing up my recommendations. Like, I understand why, because they're undocumented, they can't take custody of her legally, even though I think that's dumb. But could you recommend like some sort of visitation?
Absolutely.
Okay, I did that. Woo! I was like, I'm gonna gamble.
Not be doing any fairness to these children if the Valdezes were removed from their life, right?
Okay, good. I was like, I don't know if I can make it since they're undocumented.
Well, they kind of
Absolutely.
they kind of let her do that, although they were concerned because they thought they were partying on the weekends. But
I'm trying not. Okay, I clearly do not have a good poker face. I have no love for the foster parents in this story.
Yeah, but how do you balance that with how many times they've been moved?
You mean the foster
You
parents?
could stumble into a worse foster family.
Do you mean the last foster family that just won't take them to the right church?
Yeah.
Yes. I just think that they have no idea of what culture is and how to foster that.
I don't know, but I mean, I'll be upfront. I wrote in my recommendation, I think that the risk of the sisters being separated would be much more traumatic than the risk of the culture issues. If they have time with the Valdezes and we know they're going to get it and they're going to stay together, like to me, like, I mean, who knows? They might be separated again. To me, it's like fostering. Isn't that always like rolling the dice a little bit? That makes me way nervous.
Well, and she even said that they were good to them. They had a nice.
Yeah. I mean,
But they
their
don't
daughter
really like Maria.
jerk,
They don't really care about Maria though. They care about the little one.
little ones.
No, that's a whole nother thing that
That happens a lot, doesn't it?
possibly. I mean, I think just like everybody has favorites, but to me, the more the issue of when I think that comes into play is when my foster child is treated entirely different than the bio kids in the home. That is when, as a CASA, I think you have to say something. You have to draw attention to those kind of issues.
Well, that
So
was
we
my
talked
question
about-
too. Is like, do you always do you get sibling sets as a CASA, or is it only just one child?
Oh, no, you're going to get the whole family, like normally.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
because that's my thing is
Um,
like, yeah, if she was there by herself, yeah, I'd be like, they suck. Let's get out of here. Maybe.
Okay.
I still think like, I don't know, makes me nervous. But with the little sisters and the risk that they would be separated, to me, best case scenario is she continues to build this relationship with the Valquez family. She gets her special immigration status. We get her established, and she can take your dang little sisters. You know what I mean? Like, with the
That would
support
be-
of that other family.
That would be another option we can do, right? Okay.
I don't
So
know.
we
Can
talked
I write
about-
that down?
Okay, and this is another thing that I really want to make sure you guys are aware of. Okay. So we do, especially in class, when there's like 10 of you, okay, you guys are kind of lucky because there's just the 2 of you, and you guys just get me. So I can be the devil's advocate and be the bad person, and that's fine. But in class, like we might say, let's list our recommendations. And someone in the group says, well, I think that, I think we need to try to look for another foster home. Like, I don't like them. But then you're in my group, Sarah, and you say, well, I really want her to stay where they are. You don't have to agree. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, we can have differing opinions. As long as they're all coming from the same kind of place, right?
Right.
As long as you're saying, hey, I agree that maybe the foster parents
These people sound like jerks. I agree.
a little more culture awareness.
Well, a
Okay.
couple things here. Can I say, I would sort of think, and this is just sort of my perception of foster care, are there that many homes out there that if this home has taken these 3 children and is treating them fairly well other than church, and wouldn't you be happy to leave them there rather than gambling on something else that might be a totally worse situation or separating them?
Yeah. Could
So
you
this-
say like other foster placement contingent on them remaining together as a sibling group?
Okay, well, for starters,
And that's
the
another.
only,
And wouldn't
the
that be-
only person that will get to decide placement is DCB.
Not me. Not me.
And I want you to pay attention to what I just said. Okay, I didn't say the judge. I said DCBS.
Right.
What are you saying?
DCBS, which is the cabinet. Okay, that means that CASA can come in with the best of intentions, some really great red flags, and the judge could say, that's perfect. I totally agree, and we need to be getting these children moved. DCBS says, kind of like what you said, Vicki. Well, they're not hurting the children. They're feeding them. So we're not going to move them. Then guess what? They're not getting
That's what
moved.
is good. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't necessarily get to come in and say we want placement to change, but we can advocate for all the ways to make that placement better. And I think that that this is definitely a case where I would have probably more recommendations for what the foster parents need to do than
Okay,
almost
I like
anybody
that.
else on the table.
I was
I
gonna
mean,
say,
I didn't even know we could do that. I didn't even know you could like
Absolutely.
recommend the foster stuff to do. That's awesome. Okay,
Absolutely.
I like that.
Okay.
My
Now, they
recommendations
can
are
all say
changing
no.
right now.
And
Yeah.
remember, that's the whole point about that recommendation section. It said the judge may choose to make that an order. She can say, I think you carried that a little too far. And, you know, I'm not going to recommend that. You know what I'm saying?
They're not
Like,
going
it'd
to
be okay.
convert to Catholicism.
Yes. I mean, to me, I just feel like all the way down to the birth control issue, everything in this entire scenario is because of the lack of cultural awareness that these foster parents have. And what they're coming in with as their bias of what these children are, I guess, tainted by, I would kind of say. Like,
See,
it's
I was
almost
just
like
so like struck by, there seemed to be this undercurrent of like, well, we'll just let her stay and see if she can become a like productive adult as an undocumented person. Like, she'll be deported. Like, I didn't understand the way they were phrasing some of that stuff. I was like, if she ages out, she could be deported. Like,
yeah, I didn't understand some of that either because it wasn't quite explaining how to handle that or what needs to happen.
right. And well, honestly, I think it's because there's so many what ifs, right? She really needs to talk to that lawyer and get the process going. But you saw that opens her up. I don't know if you guys ever watched The Fosters. Anybody ever watched the series The Fosters? Okay. That has been my COVID like show that I watched. They adopt like it addresses every issue that I've ever heard of about any foster care situation. Okay, like these kids have the worst of everything. But in the last season, they bring in a girl that's undocumented and they follow her story. And I love it because it shows you how all of a sudden now they're on the radar. So it shows how if they don't agree and that she doesn't follow all their protocol, that she's probably opening herself up for a good chance she's going back to El Salvador.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like that all roads lead to there. So let's take the one chance we have to file for special status and get her on the path to citizenship. There's no, I mean, DACA kind of, but she's probably too late for that. Like,
and so, you know, it's all about making sure that they have the right people, that they know the right people. But I really don't see these foster parents being those kind of supportive people that are going to go above and beyond to make sure Maria's taken care of. So the CASA in this situation is going to have to be that person, right? You guys see that? Like, they're probably going to have to be the one that we have national CASA that can help us know how to, you know, to find
the right attorney that specializes in that particular process.
Yes.
That's
So
good to know.
that's one thing great about CASA is it's a national thing. So even though we may never deal with certain issues here, they have all dealt with them somewhere. So
Yeah, I
they
found
may
a
say,
couple of
"Hey, talk
CASA
to Ohio."
websites that had lots of good, like different state CASA websites, you know, like California and
Yes.
Arizona that are probably dealing with this a lot much more than we are.
Yes.
That had
And
good
let me tell you, Texas is like one of the most amazing CASAs ever. Like, they come into the National CASA convention, they all have matching football jerseys and like they
Texas is
are
a
like
lot.
loud and proud and they literally do the most amazing work. And so it's so cool to get to see all the different, you know, states represented and what some of the things that they bring to the table. We have a entire sorority that they have made CASA like their goal.
Oh, like their national
And so
charity. That's
they
so
gave,
cool.
$2 million, I think, to CASA last year.
that's
Like, it's just
awesome.
crazy. So there's all kinds of just really neat things that CASA does. But I know it's a little off the subject, but I loved watching The Foster about this scenario because it really made me take this story different. Because I just saw another side of what can happen. And I just think that, you know, so what were some of the recommendations? Let's do that real quick before we get off here. What are some of the recommendations that we can recommend for, oh, you got to go. It's 2:50.
Yeah, I gotta go. I'll just say real fast. I recommended that she file for special immigration juvenile status because I think the lack of education would hopefully get her over the best interest situation. situation, maybe even her asthma.
Okay.
Maria's, I said that they do not exhibit appropriate cultural sensitivity, but that I don't think separation is a good idea. And that I didn't know, I thought like I'd like for them to do training. I didn't know that was a thing. And then the specific needs, I just talked about, I don't know the names or exactly what we have, but like an independent living support program,
Okay.
and to continue that guardianship past the age of 18 so that she can pursue community college.
Those are great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an email with all of the sample court reports and things for you to look at. And then I'm going to talk to Vicki for just a few more minutes and go over all that with her. But then I'm going to send them to you, and then you call me later if you need me to go over anything with you. Okay?
All right. Thank
Otherwise,
you.
see you next
Thank
week.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Oh my goodness. I know that I was talking 90 miles an hour trying to think about how we could possibly get all those things covered before she had to hop off here.
I know, there was a lot in this. I'm trying to remember where. Okay, so where were we?
So we're talking about recommendations that we made that we're going to make to the judge.
And we didn't discuss much about the little children. I mean, that didn't seem to cover them. I guess it was more about her. What was her name? I totally lost her name.
Maria?
Maria. I thought it was Maria, but I thought I just looked that up because that's a
Yeah, no, you're good.
popular name. And can you as a CASA or someone talk to this family, the simple things that would make such a difference in her life, like going to church? Can somebody, are those just recommendations, or how does that work?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to hope that as a CASA, you have a relationship with that foster parent. That you could possibly have that conversation. One of my most, difficult case that I had with a foster home, I think I've kind of told you a little bit. I had 2 little girls that were labeled as level 5s. They were put in a home where there were locks on all the cabinets. They had a closet that had drawers, but there were locks on their drawers. So they could have toys, but they had to be locked away. The walls were completely bare. And so the CASA was like, I went to a training and they talked about how that in order for these kids to feel like this is their space, that they need to decorate it to be their space. Could we make an art project that they can, have in their home? And the foster parent was like, no. And
Parents. Well,
do what?
I said, how did they get to be foster parents? But it's level 5 is because the problems.
So level 5 is the worst of the worst unless you go to a residential treatment center.
So they thought they had to lock everything up?
Yes. So what they had done is they had horror story after horror story of these children that they had brought into their home, right? They put holes in the walls. They destroyed all the electronics. They ate all the food in the house. But my little girls were, never supposed to have been a level 5. There was nothing that really should have made them a level 5. So I felt like from the very beginning, they were wrongly labeled. And then, it was like a prison. It was a very sterile environment. They also had to do Bible studies every night. So there were just these different things that were just along the way. And my CASA was like, from the very beginning, she freaked out. She was like, okay, we got to get these girls out of this house. I don't want them here. And I said, okay, we can't come in with, guns blazing. You got to, let's figure out where's this coming from? How do we work on it? So we tried really hard fostering that relationship with the foster parent, really trying to bring in, research that said, hey, if you could put color in their room, it would change their, mental health. All these things. Well, none of that worked. So we ended up having to go the route of, can we get the therapist to say they're not a level 5? Can we change our leveling? And then they'll have to move them. And we were in that process when their dad was able to get them back. And so we never had to go through all those hoops. But it was really challenging. And so I hope that it's not that kind of I'm not misbehaving at all. I'm hoping that in this situation that maybe they would be open to just letting her go to the Catholic Church, realizing that part of the Catholic, part of the Hispanic culture is a lot of people having your family together. So these huge parties that they're having every weekend is really just all the family getting together. There's just.
Does this happen a lot in foster families? I mean, they're not all the perfect little families we're hoping for. So do a lot of these kids have some problem or another with these people?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever brought anybody into your home that wasn't your family member before, but there's always going to be these like tensions and expectations that they're not going to have. And so, I mean, there's never going to be this like perfect foster family that these kids are going to go to.
Yes.
And so I can't say, but there are some that honestly, you're just like, yes, maybe this is their fourth foster family, but finally, this is the greatest fit ever. I actually have a scenario right now where we have some foster parents that we have some really bad stories on that we've tried really hard to not hold every story that we've heard against them and kind of the way that they've treated some of our children. But right now, I got a phone call that said 2 of my boys were going to this foster home. And there was that part of me that was like, oh my Lord, what are we doing? Like, I don't want any more kids going there. Like, it's just never working out. It's not a good scenario. But now these 2 boys are the same age as one of their sons. And let me tell you, it's a night and day difference in the dynamic of that home than it was with any of the other children that we had in there. And right now, things are going amazing. And I hope that all it really took was them finding the right fit and that these little boys are their right fit.
Why would that be? I could see maybe if they had, a 16-year-old and they had 5-year-olds, but why would that?
There's just lots of different scenarios. So, like, once upon a time, they had a whole bunch of little kids in the house. And their kids are kind of, not big, but bigger. And so they were taking the little kids to daycare, and they were staying at daycare all day long. They were just leaving them at daycare. So they weren't really incorporated in the family. I think they figured out they were literally up with them for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a day, between daycare and coming home and taking baths and eating and going to bed. Like, that was literally their only time that they were spending with that child. Where now, when they take their son to soccer, they're taking this kid to soccer too. And so they're just incorporating them entirely differently in the family. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be good.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine bringing in other children. It's even,
And like I told you before, they're getting no training. They're getting less training than Costas get to be a foster parent.
I guess that's what I was thinking when you were talking about this family has no awareness of their culture. You would think that would be something you think about before when you take these children. Okay, their culture's different than mine. What things do I need to look for or expect or think about that's important to them?
Well, yeah. And I would hope that if there was NECO, let's say, that NECO was like, listen, we're going to have a cultural class that I'm expecting you to be at. And we have it a lot with like, I know a lot of the foster placements, they'll have like an African-American hair day. And like, they'll literally have experts come in and say, this is how you wash, clean, style African-American hair. Because it's very different than trying to do my hair, right?
I was just
and
reading
so
that somewhere. I don't know where that came up. I don't know the time it takes, and most people don't realize it and all that stuff. But
yeah, well, and we have that extreme versus we had a little girl that got put with her aunt, and she was African American. Her mom and dad were African American, but she wasn't buying the same kind of oil that mom wanted her to buy. And she wasn't putting the right kind of conditioner on her hair that mom wanted her to have. She didn't like her braids. And it was just funny the kind of level that of what these parents were expecting and wanting, and how we're like, they're not your child. I mean, like, it is your child, but they're with the foster parent now, and the foster parent gets to make that decision. So sometimes you run into those kind of issues, and so I always thought that was funny, because I was like, well, here I'm thinking that if I had an African American child, that I would clearly be doing their braids wrong, but to me, it just showed it wouldn't have mattered who this child was placed with. There was going to be, turmoil and anxiety about it. But we try to do our best and to realize that, and we want our CASAs to constantly be learning more about culture. If you don't know anything about a certain culture, especially if your child is that, we want you to learn about it. We had a CASA that I think that, and it was before my time, so I don't want to quote it completely wrong, so I'm going to make up a little bit just to give the scenario. But he, the little boy was, the child was like Muslim, I think, and I'm not completely going to swear by that, but something along those lines.
He had what?
And I think he was Muslim, and so like the dad came to court and said, we're not going to give our child, he's not going to get a shot, he's not going to get immunized because it goes against our culture. And so our CASA somehow met one of the leaders of that church or, organization that he knew, got to meet him, got to know him, and then asked him, is it against your culture to get immunized? And they were like, no, not at all. And so he actually went to court and presented the findings from the religion that went against what the parent was saying. And then they ended up having to allow the child to be immunized. So it was just like, but if he wouldn't have went to the extreme he did, which was to meet, someone that was outside his culture and ask questions that, I'm sure were not super easy to just come up and ask. But he did, and it was really great. And he is probably the least likely CASA that if you told me that that's what he would do, I'd be like, no way. And he did, but he loves his kids. And the things that we do for our children are just evident in every day. And we just really want you guys to constantly be growing. We want to constantly be growing because none of us have it figured out. We're all going to be insensitive or say the wrong thing at some point. But one, that you're aware of the fact that you can possibly say something wrong. Being aware that you're not an expert. But trying to understand what's going on in the life of your child. And it's not necessarily color of skin or where they're from. It can be as different as one of the trainings that I went to when I was learning to be a CASA nationally. There was a lady there, and she walked in and she had long blonde hair, super skinny and tall and blonde hair. And she said, guess what culture I am? And we were all like, okay. And she lives in a home. She grew up in Texas. And she has all Hispanic brothers and sisters, a completely Hispanic home. And it was like the coolest thing, like listening to her talk. And she's like, I love it because no one thinks I'm, going to be fluent in Spanish and that I know more about Hispanic culture than almost anybody because that's the way I was raised. And I was adopted by this family. And I loved it. I loved the fact that she could shock us all. And put us all in our place because, we all try to, even when we don't mean to, we all kind of judge a book by its cover. A lot of times I find myself at court, you're judging mom and dad based on that very first hearing. And like I told you guys, you can't do that because they're at their worst. I mean, they're experiencing some of the worst trauma that they're probably ever going to experience. They're coming in, blazing mad. And so they're not presenting well.
We don't be mad. If you took my children, I'm going to be mad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and they don't have a problem. They're mad at everybody, right? So they're not wanting to hear things they have to do to get their kids back. But then, you give it some time and you let that kind of settle. And then, 3 months later, when we have that first review and you've heard, hey, mom and dad are now cooperating with the cabinet. They're working their case plan. They're going to therapy. They're in treatment. It's huge. It's a whole different ballgame. So we just, I think we just all have to be aware that you don't want to judge someone or, I think we just do. And it's just a guard we have to put up and start realizing that we've got, and especially for CASAs, putting our own personal opinions and feelings off to the side for the betterment of our child is what we do. I mean, that's who we are. And so if you bring that to the table, we have some real reservations. And so we try really hard to have those conversations with you guys now about, okay, what are your triggers? What are the things that are really hard? What is something you don't think you could, get past? And that doesn't necessarily mean you can't be a CASA, but it might mean I'm not going to assign you with an openly gay child, right? Or if you clearly have, I don't know, I mean, I say that, but I mean, I really would hope that we could work on that and make you understand how to be inclusive. But, there are people that just inclusivity is just a much harder thing to have. Or maybe they're very opinionated about, who they are. And I mean, I worked in a school. My husband was in ministry school and nobody knew my husband was a minister. I didn't want them to know that. That wasn't, important to me. Most of them all did before it was over with. It was pretty clear that, Miss Doom's not going to be okay with, certain decisions. But I would never go in there and be like, I hope you went to church Sunday. Did you go to Sunday school? I would never want that to be who they are. I wanted them to know they could talk to me, that I was open, and that I would be there for them. So I just think that is CASA, I'm always putting that face forward, like no matter what's behind the scenes and no matter what I might think, I would never openly say that or be discouraging, because our kids need all the encouragement they can get. And if you can't do that, if you come into a situation that you can't do that, one, talk to your supervisor, or two, just be like, how can I learn more about that to be better? Because like I said, none of us are perfect. None of us are gonna always say or do the right thing. But knowing how to get past that and learn and grow, I think that's the important part. So how do you feel about writing your court report? Are you nervous?
I don't know. Well, probably. I'm always nervous about doing something like that. But I think after seeing some of that stuff, it makes a little more sense.
Yeah. Well, and, like I said, you guys have been breaking down all those things each time, right? So first we just took notes. Then we're talking about what are things that are concerning, right? Then now we're recommending how we can make it better. So that's all going to be parts of your court report. So whenever you read the red case, so I'm going to send you first, I'm going to send you an email. It's going to have 2 sample court reports that actually came from our office that are actually people that are CASAs. And then I'm going to send you the template that we actually use for our court reports, the blank template. And that's what I want you to do your red case on, is our actual template. It's editable, so you can get right on there and start typing. And then when you complete it, you're going to email it to me. And then we'll talk about ways you can make it better or how wonderful you did.
I'm a terrible writer, but we'll get through that.
Well, and the other thing is, you're never going to write these by yourself. I mean, I am going to say, okay, I need your report on Friday, and you're going to send me this email, but I'm still going to do the same thing I'm going to do with you next week, which is I'm still going to go over it with you. I'm still going to say, okay, you can't say that the foster mom is the greatest person ever. You can't tell me how horrible mom is. I respect your opinion. However, we can't say that in our court report. And then we'll go from there. So it's a long process before it just goes straight to the judge. Like, it's not something you write and then I just send it. I mean, you're gonna.
I know.
Do what?
You get a little narrow-minded, not about the kids and.
Yeah.
About the bigger picture.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the fun part to me, to be like, okay, that was a great start. Now let's start with, you didn't tell me anything about mom and dad. Like, what do you know about mom and dad? Or, yes, you told me how great the foster parents are, but you didn't tell me anything about how they react with the actual children. Or, there's just lots of different scenarios. But I will send you that. Like I said, Thursday or Wednesday of next week, we will have 30 minutes for you to ask me any questions. By that time, maybe you've kind of started it and, you know, you're kind of putting some scenarios out. A lot of times that's when questions come up, like, can I recommend this or can I not say that? I always tell my classes, put everything in there. It's a lot easier for me to take out than I can expand on what you give me. So I'd rather you put so much information in there that I'm like, none of that paragraph needs to be in there. In fact, Stephanie one time had to edit a court report and said, okay, I took entirely pages 4 and 5 out of your entire report because there was so much information. But that's so much better than you sending me a paragraph and me being like, this has nothing. Like, you're going to tell me something. So
Yeah.
I think you'll do great though. But so next week we'll just talk about that. We'll get to meet the panel. You'll get to actually talk to real classes and hear from them and what they, you know, have. They have different sections they're going to actually talk about, and then they're going to have a Q&A for you guys to ask them any questions that you have. So make sure you have lots of questions.
So next week, we'll talk about the court report.
If you have any questions about it.
Okay.
Yeah, because like we're going to have half an hour is all you're going to have with me. It's just half an hour.
Okay.
And then the panel's going to jump on with us.
Okay. And then what's after that? After that is?
Then the next week, you're going to schedule a time with just me personally to go over your court report. And then once all the background checks are back, I'll send you an email that says the judge is available at this date and this time, and make sure that works with you guys. And then we'll do that. It's probably going to be a couple more weeks out because we still haven't gotten everything back yet. Okay. But hopefully maybe by the end of next week, I'll have a ballpark of how much longer it's going to be to do that. And then after the judge, then you'll get to do the observing court.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And then you'll be done.
All right. It's all
So
very.
how do you feel about it? Did you have a better week this week?
I did. I did.
Good.
But you know what? The time frames they say on there, how could it take you that long to do that stuff?
Oh yeah, I agree.
I mean,
I
so
don't
I
do
don't
that
know
long.
what time I start being, but it's like, I don't know, 2 hours to watch a video. I don't remember the exact times, but some of it was a little.
Yeah. Especially at the beginning, I felt like it was way kind of exaggerated. But then, like I said, it just really picks up as you go, like you're putting more and more time in for different things. So it all works out. Ultimately, it's got to be 30 at the end. So
That's right. Okay. I've got to put on my names. I missed a few at the beginning when I still don't have my printer, but anyway.
Oh no.
Came out and fixed it. It was working when he left. It hasn't worked since, so he's coming again.
That's
Anyway,
terrible.
it's been very frustrating. You don't realize how much you use a printer if you don't have one.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, that's what here. I have a printer, but then I save almost everything I do here is just, I don't need to print anything. Then when I go to the office, I go to print it all. Well, I couldn't print off my laptop for like a month, and that was insane. And now I can, and I'm like, what a difference being able to just plug it in and now print on my stuff. When I walk into the office, it's so much better. So I feel it. And I love that now the new printers don't require you to have to set them up like you used to have to do.
Well, that's it. Anyway, that's a long story about my printer problems, but anyway. So yes, this is all very interesting. You know, so much of it is things I've done before, learned before.
Right.
You know, especially with nursing and nursing CEUs. And I thought this could be a nursing CEU.
There you go. I'm telling you, there is a lot of my really great classes that came from the medical field. I think that's just because they're naturally nurturing and caring, and I love their medical brain, because we get assigned cases all the time that, you know, the children are medically fragile, or you know, those kind of things come up, and it's just great when you guys already have a background in it. We had a lady that she worked in the office. I mean, she was a nurse, but she does more administrative stuff. And she was our go-to for the longest time at the hospital if we couldn't get a record. You know, if we kept jumping through hoops and nobody was giving us what we needed, we would call Gwen, and she'd be like, this is the person you talk to. This is who you need to send it to. But I have to say, over the time I've been here, it just seems like it's getting better and better as far as we send our court order, we get it. Rarely do we run into anywhere that gives us any real issues about getting information. So that's great. But we do just have to remember we can't be entitled to mom and dad's information. That is our one, thing. Even one of my new classes today, she's on a new case and she said, okay, I'm going to request that substance abuse assessment. And I was like, you can't. It's like, remember, we don't get to know what the parents are doing. So,
No.
but it gets frustrating, especially if you've been calling the social worker and you're not getting an answer and you don't know. And so sometimes that section for the parent, we literally write in there, no new information to report on mom and dad. I don't know anything new on mom and dad. I don't know if they're getting visits, I don't know. So, then that's fine. I think it's more important to not make up stuff or not say things that 4 other people told you than it is to just be like, I really don't know. So,
Let's be honest.
and whenever you're writing the red case, it is all the information you have is on a piece of paper. Okay. So there are times where there might be something you need to know that's not there. Okay. Like there might be some piece of back information that you think you might have needed. So those are the things to ask me next week. Okay. So just kind of, if you run across something that you're like, I don't know, or if you want to just make something, like if you're wondering what hearing it is or what a certain date is, you can make it up, but then tell me, I just picked this date, or I'm going to pretend it's this, or, because some of it is open to interpretation just because it's only off of paper. It's not a real life scenario. So you may not know everything. Okay. But just ask me, and if I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't, then we'll make it up. Okay.
Sounds like it.
But you're gonna be fine. I'm really glad you're stuck in there. I felt last week with Sarah, she was so encouraging to me about some of the issues that I kind of felt like maybe you were kind of being discouraged in. So I hope that last week really uplifted you. It seemed to me. So I hope that you felt stronger and better at figuring out how being a CASA is going to be. I think you have such a skill set already. Like, you're not having to learn a whole lot. It's really just remembering to put it all together and apply it.
That's the main part.
And you're going to be great. I have no doubt. All right. Well, I will see you next week.
Okay, I'll see
And
you.
look for an email from me. Okay.
I will. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
You're
weekend.
welcome.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.